I'm Mark O'Brien, and I'm the director of Access Ballymun. Back on March 26th this year, I did my first interview as part of the Access Chat series. Little did I think then that here I'd be in December, about to do my 90th interview. In this very strange year, it's been amazing to talk to so many great people about their lives, their work, and what they do. We started the series to connect people in the arts with the public during these strange times, to let people get a bit of insight into the artists' lives, people that work behind the stage, people that work in front of the stage, about why they do what they do, their passions, interests, and their hope for the future. This evening, we've put together a montage of about 19 of the interviews that we've done so far, snippets from each to give you a flavour of what the Access Chat is about. All the full interviews are available on our website, accessballymun.ie, or on our YouTube channel. I hope you enjoy it.
And my name is Olwen Fuere, and well, I'm a performer, I'm a wanderer, journey person, a whole load of things, and I have a good life. Yes, we all read. In my family, we all read. We would all sit in the living room with a fire going usually, and everybody would be buried in their books. There were 5 of us, everybody would be buried in their books, and every now and then somebody would roar out laughing, and everybody would have to find out what they were laughing at. So it was very much but it was like, well, all kind of amazing literature. A lot of it was total trash, but we were totally involved in reading, and then film also, insofar as whenever we would go back to France or anything like that, we would maybe see television there. And one of my brothers used to do this thing we had a Super 8 camera and recorder. And one of my brothers used to get all these Charlie Chaplin films from this place in Dublin, somewhere in South Anne Street. I don't know what it was called. I'm sure it no longer exists. And would bring them down at Christmas time. So we would project loads of Charlie Chaplin movies on the wall.
Wow.
Yeah, so that would be my first really deep engagement with performance. I wish I still admire that kind of performance and that kind of comedy and depth, I suppose. In a way, like I still think that comedians are the greatest artists of all. There's nothing like making somebody laugh, so that was really a deep engagement, plus the incredible skill that he had. And another thing that I was very interested in was circus. I traveled over to see my sister, who was living in London when I was 10 years old, and she brought me to the circus. That was my night out, or my day out.
Yeah.
And that was a huge influence as well. And I think I would definitely have had a sort of a yearning to be a circus performer. I was very hyper flexible as a kid, so I could do all these really strange shapes. And so I think maybe contortionist was one of my first ambitions.
I would love to have seen your career guidance teacher notes then. That would be interesting. I want to run away with the circus of being contortionist, please.
Be contortionist.
Yeah.
But just to refer to what you just mentioned about silence, I'm really fascinated that that's the word that comes to you, and I'm very heartened, I think, because it's so strange that when people, when I started off as a performer, people would ask me, what kind of work I'm interested in, and I would always say I'm just fascinated in non-verbal performance, and yet almost all of my work, with a few exceptions, have been so intensely involved with language and words that I don't quite know how they fit, but clearly they do.
And it's very kind of political with a small p, but it's there throughout an awful lot of your work about whose gaze, who are we kind of finding the novel through. I mean, I think obviously in Room, that's very, very much there. But even in your other work, there's kind of the voice of the narrator and where that's coming from. And just, has that ever shifted for you as you're developing something, like, in relation to what person this is in, or whether it's a third person, or like,
this is a really good question, Mark. I don't think I've ever been asked it, after God, I'm 50, and when I think of all the interviews I've done, but I've never been asked about this question. But you're dead right. I'm very interested in point of view, maybe because of that experience of growing up thinking like, I see everything a bit differently from the people around me, and what would they think if they saw it from my point of view?
Yeah.
So it's something that I think about so much before I begin a piece of fiction. Obviously, if it's on stage or film, point of views are more multiple anyway. You can still choose, for instance, in the film of Room, we still only have scenes that Jack could see, except briefly when he's in the rug. But fiction is much more point of view, in that every single word will be flavored by who's thinking this, who's saying it. And it's something, I don't think it shifts during the writing, because I take it so seriously as a question that I think about it sometimes for years before I begin, because, you know, a lot of my work, I know I'm going to be writing that story for years. I just haven't time to get to it yet. So by the time I get to it, I've done a lot of sort of brooding over it in spare moments. And one question I really sweat over is exactly who tells this story. And sometimes I can't find my way into the story until I work out who's telling the story. So for instance, one example, I did one short story about a Scottish 18th century cult who, you know, they were an end of days cult. They thought the world was ending. So this woman basically rounded up about 50 people and, you know, got them all to lock themselves in a barn with her and wait for Jesus to airlift them away. And I thought this was obviously fascinating material, but I couldn't write a whole novel about it because I didn't want to be stuck in a barn with these people for you know, a couple of months. As they bickered hungrily.
Yeah.
And you know, she herself, the cult leader, was such a sort of braggart, you know, so zealous and extreme. I thought, I don't really want her ranting away to my readers. And then I realized that the interesting person to me was the local vicar. Got so caught up that he basically came on board as her booster, her second in command. And I thought, oh, he's interesting. So once I had him, the story wrote itself really quickly. So point of view to me is the key. And I've often wanted to write a sort of omniscient narrator style book. I love Dickens and so on, and modern examples like, say, Zadie Smith. You know, people are just sort of the overhead camera zooming around confidently. And I sometimes think, oh yeah, this book I'll write from an omniscient point of view. And I try, and after about 2 pages, I'm like, this is bullshit. I don't believe this. I have to choose who is my point of view. Somehow now you've given me an actual rationale for this, you know.
There you go. I mean, the cast was phenomenal.
Amazing. And it was directed by Howard Davies, who I worked with on that, and then I worked with 3 times after that, and he very sadly passed away in 2016. An amazing, amazing director who was all about the play and the writer, and was without ego as a director. His plays, his productions were just so beautiful. But that, again, that play, this kind of Greek tragedy, essentially, it's set in 50s America. But I was interested. I worked with David Suchet on that, and what I learned from him was economy, and relaxation. It was amazing to be with him in the wings before starting that. He's about to start this huge part, this huge evening's work, and this massive emotional journey to go over. We did it for like 6 months. Wow. Seeing his calmness and his relaxation and his ability to just be open. I really learned from that, because as a younger actor, I found I was locking a lot. Because I was being very intense about everything, I was kind of locking myself. And I just learned from him the ability to actually just be open and be relaxed and be free and be calm and be open to whatever happens. And that was astonishing, an astonishing lesson to learn. And I got a terrible bout of stage fright for a week in the middle of that show. Just out of nowhere, I had a week where I felt terrified going on stage. And it was literally from the Monday to the Saturday, and then it was over. It was a very strange moment of stage. It's the only time I've had stage fright so far in my life, and it was terrifying. And I don't know where it came from. I don't know where it went, but it went, thankfully. And
Never think about it again. It's gone. That's. I mean, when you look through your career, because I mean, you mentioned something earlier on which is kind of interesting about that kind of fight. Because it seems to be from chatting to you and from like looking at your career, I think one has to have that fight in oneself. And you mentioned kind of back in Variety and that teaching about brushing yourself down and, you know, that kind of rejection piece, but also having to fight against perceptions, you know, And they mentioned particularly with the commitments and particularly where that kind of, you know, you might have, is that something as well that kind of you felt as a, not a battle is too strong of a word, but something that you could carry with you through your career that's kind of it's a campaigning piece, like, you know, it's kind of, I'm going to try that, or I want to try that.
I think for me, I just wasn't comfortable being portrayed like that all the time. And that's why I kind of went against it. But having said that now, in hindsight, because I was young and I guess I was scared of where it would lead to. And especially now when you see all that Me Too movement, I think I backed away from presenting myself to people in Hollywood or whatever as this kind of an actress because I didn't want it. I didn't want that unwelcomed attention, you know?
Yeah.
So, and some people are very happy to have that, you know? It just doesn't suit my personality, you know? And yeah, I think I kind of then backtracked and went around the other way to meet myself the other side. Yeah. So now, if I play somebody who's a little bit overtly, now having said that, I'm no spring chicken, but overtly sexy or whatever, it's more that I'm in control now. Yes. Because it's, you know, the years have I've gained from experience.
Yes. Well, that's a big word there. You mentioned is control, and kind of it's hard. It can be hard fought at times in any career, particularly as an actor, to kind of to have an agency or to have control over what you do, because there's so much on it. They look and waiting.
Yeah, and I did. I mean, not to kind of, you know, I've been very blessed, and I'm really grateful for everything I've done. But there have been things that I've been looking back now and say, maybe I shouldn't have been so pious and saying I won't take my clothes off for that. Maybe I should have. Especially now when you see everybody nowadays, that everything is so, but I think, you know, I'm old fashioned and I come from, you know, I'm proud and I feel that my life, I guess there's part of me that I want to keep for myself.
I have to even hold it because I'm just like, yeah. I'm feeling emotions that maybe I thought I had them under wraps, Mark. Maybe I thought I had them under wraps because I'm just like, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of people not seeing me, not seeing the person that's standing behind me or behind them or behind them or behind them. Like, how can you not see what's in front of your flippant face? It's been there for years. Slavery went on for over 400 friggin' years. 400. Now, we're not saying that nobody else has had a plight in the world. Of course, we know, we can see, we know what's going on.
Yeah.
We know what's going on. We come from Ireland, for God's sake. We know. We even know, you know, on a personal level, people in Ireland know what oppression looks like, knows what oppression feels like, knows what starvation feels like. We know it's there. So why can't we be better allies? Like, why can we not be better allies? How can we not understand this? How can we not see this? How can we not want to do better? How can we not want to be better? How can we not want to?
I think if anyone is listening to this and they ever get to make their first feature, I think you'll realize the best bit is just about when you're just starting to film. Like, it's just so magic. I remember even just like being told, come down to the production offices, and I was like, production offices? I was like, so I had to come down and help with the last auditions, and I went down and they had this place, like they had a building and they had a work yard and they were building bits of the house, and I was like, I was seeing the world being created, and there was like in the office building there was set designers and they had mini models of things, and I remember going, oh my God, I wrote all this down but now it's like something else. I had to go into the costume department and have all these fittings, and I was like, what the hell is going on? That was huge for me. Like, that was huge joy in the journey. And then when you see all the trailers, like, as well, oh my God, that's the best crack. And then the catering, oh my God, you're like, yeah, this is all great. But I think there was a great moment as well that was a huge lesson to me, and near the end was Niall, our locations guy, who is so funny, so positive. The things that can go wrong when you're in the process of filming, you've got to have somebody like Niall on board. He's like, he finds his way around obstacles like you wouldn't believe, and that happened on the day. And he said to me on the wrap party, he just went, "Well, thanks a million for a job. I really enjoyed that one." And I went, "All right, yeah." And he goes, "Well, I hope you write another film, because I could really use another job, because you gave all of these people work to do for a few months." And
Yeah.
I remember going, "Oh my God," like, it sounds stupid, but you forget that when you're writing a script and you're developing a script in film for years, you think it's endless, and sometimes it's torture, and you have to write 25 drafts, right? But it's because films are miracles. They're actually miracles. They're a thing where all the art forms come together, and we all have to be in sync, and we all have to make the one story together. And the reason it takes so long to come together is because there has to be enough belief that it's all set up and it's ready to go. And then the financial people will go, "Yes, I will back this now."
Yeah.
But it's got a synchronicity, it's got its own thing. And I realized the achievement of even making it happen in itself is like, that's grand. Like, by the end of May last year, I was like, you could have told me my film was going to be in the bin or not even get into a cinema. It didn't matter, because I'd gotten there and I'd had that experience. And I think if anyone's out there thinking about writing their first feature or making that first feature happen, and it might take you years, you have to realize why. It's because it's already going to be a miracle if it happens.
From your first kind of movie, what was the perception and when you saw it? I mean, was that difficult? Like, was that interesting to see, what you'd done in front of you?
I remember Terry gave me a little DVD and he goes, "Here, have that, watch that." I goes, "What is it?" And he goes, "Oh, it's Patrick's Day." I goes, "Whoa, really? And I brought it down home in this room. I was in this room here in Waterford, and Mom was with me, Dad was with me. I was like, "Mom, Dad, watch the movie I did. We did shot for 4 weeks. Watch this." And it's so different then, it's so different when you read a script and then you watch it, because when you have the work of, say, Ray Harmon, who adds the little notes from the music, and then you see Michael's cinematography and Emer Reynolds' editing, it's like it takes on a whole new shape and takes on a whole new form. And it wasn't as I imagined the script being. It was different. It was his own little thing. And it surprised me. And I remember watching it, I didn't know how to feel about it, the first time. So I watched it again and I goes, "No, that's yeah, I'm proud of that."
And then it took off, and it really took off. I mean, that must have been sort of a ride.
Yeah, that was a ride. Yeah, Terry, he rang me and he said, "Motherfucker," as he speaks. I'm like, "What's up, T?" He's like, "We're going to South by Southwest." I was like, "Cool, yeah. Where's that?" He was like, "It's over in Texas." I'm like, "Yeah, yeehaw!" And I was like, looking back, it was the perfect springboard, because South by Southwest, I didn't realize how respected it was, and how any movie, especially an Irish movie, you're lucky to get your first screening at South by. It's an amazing place. But talk about a great experience for, I was 26 as an actor. It was my first movie, and all of a sudden the openness I felt, where I felt like, oh, this is exactly where I need to be. Being in Texas with Terry, meeting people who had watched the film, who were interested in mental health, who were mental health spokespersons, who connected with it, regardless of being involved with mental health, who connected with it. And I didn't know how to feel. I was nervous about people seeing it for the first time, but it was cool because it was my first time in the States. It was my first time in America. And I remember my dad ringing Terry on the phone. He goes, "You look after him when he's over there, because I know what he's like. He's a wild boy." And Terry was like, "No problem, Pops." And we went off and had a magical time. I remember the beautiful thing about Terry as well is, like, he's invested and interested in other people, no matter what they do, where he asks them about themselves. He's not like me. He's like, and slowly, no matter what bar we went to with our film, no matter where we went to Manny Bar, there were always a rake of people around us, just like, who became new friends. And they took us out shooting one day, and I remember he was in the front of this pickup truck and I was in the back with Michael Lavelle. We were in Texas, and there was this lovely girl, Caitlin, who we're friends with, texting, and he goes, "Do you mind if I put on a tune?" And he sticks on Damo. He sticks on Damien Dempsey, Canadian Geese. And, lying flat on my back by the field, by the tracks, Canadian geese flew by. In my mind, I up and joined with them as we glide out to Ireland's eye. And we're in the middle of Texas. And it was just, and then there's a line, "We can be free with a little car key. Rivers and parks will take us far. There's friends and lovers we've yet to meet, but tonight they're watching the same stars." And I just felt like, whatever that inkling of an idea that I felt as an actor going, "Thank you," or fighting for a part. Like, it never would have happened if I didn't believe. Yeah, and if the part wasn't so great, but it's a beautiful thing to believe in yourself, where you can, a few years down the line, you could find yourself with a project and it connects with people, you know what I mean, from the germ of an idea. And I was just glad that turned out so well, that I didn't have a self-defeatist attitude going and going, this isn't going to work, or I'm not going to get it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it took off and it went everywhere, and it was an incredible year.
And I got to a point where I kind of went, this isn't enough for me. I'm telling the same story.
Yeah.
And as an actor, I want to tell a different story. And I wasn't learning anymore.
Yeah.
So I got to the point where I went, no, there has to be. Am I content with doing just this one job? Right? Am I content and it could change. It could be taken away from me at any point.
Yeah.
Or do I want to put myself out there? So I did. I started putting myself. Actually, the Axes is where I started in DYT with theatre. And then when I had Clarabelle, I kind of went, I can't do this all the time. I can't do this. I can't do theatre, and I can't do Fair City because I'll never see her. Who gets to rear my child? So I kind of stood back from theatre because I couldn't do nights and then start at 7 o'clock in the morning. I didn't have that luxury. So I went down the teaching route and I went down the Fair City route. So if I wasn't teaching or I wasn't doing a voiceover, I'd be in Fair City. And that allowed me to kind of rear Clarabelle and do that. But in 2014, DYT asked me to go back and do their 25th, wasn't it? Yeah. I was fucking terrified doing that. I hadn't done theatre in I don't know how long. So it was back, I started back on the stage with you.
That's gas.
There you go. Yeah, 2014. But it took me from 2014 it took me 3 years to kind of get my face back out there and get to meet people, and it's terrifying. You kind of see everybody's faces and I don't know about you, but for me, you kind of go, God, I'm a bit embarrassed, or I just don't know these people, and then you kind of go, oh, fuck it, I'm only human, and I want to tell stories with good people.
Yeah.
So I just have to go, hiya, I'm Clelia, nice to meet you. Yeah. Give us a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you see a Clelia-shaped hole in your production, I'd love to be in it. I'd love to. And if it's and if you think that I can bring something to that, or I can, so that's how I kind of went. Yeah, stop apologizing for yourself and just get out there and learn.
I can ask you about your first meeting with Mr. Hopkins. Like, what was that for you? Like, I mean, was it kind of, he's an acting god. Was that kind of strange to kind of be meeting someone? I always think it's strange.
I had to do a callback with him, or a chemistry read, essentially, is what they call it. And so I'd fly from here over to LA to do that. And what happened was I arrived first. It's very vivid. It was in a hotel on the beach in Santa Monica. And I was there early, and I sort of went into the room where I was supposed to go, and nobody was there. And I was like, oh God. And I was terrified. So I was like, right, I have to go to the Jacks here to sort of get myself together. And then when I walked out, they were all walking in, and he came in, and he'd been filming Thor through the big beard, whatever. And I was like, I'm giving myself 10 seconds just to freak out. Not in front, like not going to scream at him or anything, but I had to give myself 10 seconds to freak out. And I said, right, after Rain In, and he came up to me and he just walked straight up and he said, hello, Colin, nice to meet you, I'm Tony. He said, let's just have fun. I was like, okay, that was it. Yeah. Let's just have fun. He said, no, let's just have fun. I'm gonna do it. And it was great. Obviously he said, yeah, because at the end of the day, it was, I think, essentially his call at that point.
Was really caught by the way you talk about that time, but by the way you talk about the legacy, and by the way you kind of talk about your relationship with Kurt and and I suppose in some ways your relationship with his memory. Do you know what I mean? That it's kind of, you talk an awful lot about, you know, the fun side, the smart, because it's all, you know, around the world the newspapers were filled with obviously the man's dark side and tragic side. But you mentioned there about the making of, you know, Smells Like Teen Spirit video and the artistry of the man beyond, you know, beyond what people might have thought.
Yeah, well, I really did love him, and it was also the high point of my career working with him. And you know, it had been in the back of my mind for a while that his image, his death was so tragic and so grotesque, and there were enough photos of him looking out of it that that I felt, you know, and different things that had come out about him, I thought had disproportionately emphasized his self-destructive side and insufficiently focused on his brilliant creative side, which obviously is the only reason anyone cared about the tragic side. There, unfortunately, thousands and thousands of people kill themselves every year. But there's only one Kurt Cobain, you know. So I just thought, and I had these memories, and I knew it was the 25th anniversary. You know, the book came out in 2019, the first version of it, because it was the 25th anniversary of his death. And, you know, I'd written this other book, you know, for a lot of things combined to make me want to write it. And once I decided to write it, it was clear to me that that was my contribution. There's a lot of other books about Kurt and about Nirvana by some very good writers, some of them who knew him quite well. For example, Everett True's book, you know, a British journalist, and Michael Azarat's book. Those are two journalists that knew him very, very well. And Charles Cross, who, you know, was given access by Courtney to an enormous amount of material. So there's several very good books about the band, but nobody who worked with him had written a book. And I thought that I could show that side that you alluded to, how brilliant he was. He was such a genius. He wrote the lyrics, he wrote the music, he controlled the production of the records, he storyboarded the videos, he designed the album covers, and he understood with granular detail every aspect of how to connect with fans. Every interview was like a work of art. Every time he took a photo, he knew the camera was there and he would look different and what t-shirt he was wearing, you know. And so that side of him was amazing. I mean, it didn't make him, quote unquote, happy, except for brief periods of time, because he had other demons that, you know, unfortunately ended up shortening his life. But when it came to his art, he was incredibly focused and incredibly brilliant. So yeah, I did focus on that, and hopefully it's a good contribution to the information and about him. It's just my perception. He showed a little something different to everybody. A lot of these genius types do, you know, it's Bob Marley or Dylan, you know, different people have different experiences. Mine were very positive.
I'm talking about when I get up on stage. So with bigger crowds, I find that bigger crowds mean there's bigger lights. You don't get to see as much of the crowd. You can just feel their energy, which is all I need. I don't need you looking at me extra hard. So with bigger crowds of people, there's a distance between us because I don't have to get to know you personally all the way, but I can feel your energy and I can speak to you like I can see you the way you can see me. So with bigger crowds, I feel more comfortable. There's much more space for the both of us. I say both of us as audience and then performer.
Yeah.
But I typically enjoy bigger crowds because I just feel more comfortable. But in general, when I get up on stage, I feel vulnerable. I just feel vulnerability, but I also feel very powerful, which is an interesting thing to say. I guess it's a weird thing to say that you feel powerful when you're on stage by yourself, but yeah, there's a certain sense of like, and the power is just for me, and that's the only thing I don't share with the audience. I just enjoy feeling powerful by myself. And I suppose that's the only thing that keeps me confident throughout the whole performance. Feels like the most confident and the most powerful part of who I am is who's presenting on stage.
Yeah.
And coupled with vulnerability, I think it makes for a great performer.
I mean,
and we didn't even have, so all of a sudden I'm getting these offers of big gigs and Olympia and all, and my nerves were gone. Like, it was so, because I would have leaned on Kieran a lot, and I would have leaned on Arcady, and I would have leaned on my family.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So now all of a sudden it's me on my own, and it was really scary, I have to tell you. But I got through it, I got through it. When I think back on that time, I should have been really celebrating and reveling, in the whole joy of the success, because I was winning awards and stuff like that for the album. And all the time, there was always this little voice in my head going, oh, they're going to find out, you're a bit of a fraud and you're not really that good. And, all that stuff that goes on in your head. I didn't feel I was worthy of any of it, So unfortunately, I didn't enjoy it, and for years and years and years, I had those awards hid under the bed in a box. Do you know what I mean? It was only in the last few years that I took them out and go, that's nice to have, It's like 20 odd years later,
I also think there's something about the way that it's been made. And I mentioned the word yearning earlier on. What really grabbed me about it was, is it makes you yearn for a life that you actually didn't live, or is it a nostalgic around?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's huge, and that's very novelistic. That's very.
It is. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I did not have a relationship like that at that age. I didn't. There was no. I was too. I was not. I mean, it's not about the openness. Don't think I was kind of. I didn't grow up in a kind of family where there was a tremendous guilt around sex or anything like that. Not at all. But I was, for all sorts of other reasons, was not open to that sort of love at that age. And I think often a lot of nostalgia and yearning is for a thing that we didn't fully have. Yeah. Or didn't really experience fully the first time.
Yeah.
We only really experienced it in its roundness in memory.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the Proustian idea, I suppose.
I mean, the most powerful moments in it are, and it sits now as a kind of quasi grown up. You kind of feel those moments of going, "That's not what they fucking said." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the moment
I know.
No,
No, I know. You do. We felt that even on the day. There were like, Susie Lavelle, who's this brilliant cinematographer that I collaborated with, and she shot all my episodes. She's so empathetic, but she'd be like, you turn around after the take and she'd either be crying or raging, depending on who done what.
Yeah. Very novelistic or, cinematic and theatrical in a way. It's by and large what's not said in that.
Yeah, it's that magical thing that you can sometimes have in film where the room seems to be present, the air is there, and you feel the time passing and the energy and the kind of feeling passing between the two characters, which it constantly blows my mind that can happen on this sort of mechanical medium. But that's because we're people and so are they, and therefore so much of what's brought to it is brought to it by the audience. And part of the skill of the filmmaker is to allow the audience to do that, is to give them sort of, for me, and this is the hardest thing to talk about how it works, but for me, it's often about how you are managing and creating a sort of intensity of focus in the viewer. That's really what is being worked on. That's the material really that you're working with. It's the orientation of the audience, the sense of questing, of needing to know, of understanding. It's sometimes putting people in a position which feels really present, but actually is slightly off center. Which focuses the mind and the attention of the viewer and makes them sort of almost reach in and try and find it for themselves. That's more powerful than like directly presenting them with what you think is happening. So it's enough, but not too much in terms of what you're showing.
Yeah, that's brilliantly put. But the sense of, I mean, you talk about Shane and kind of what he brings to you and what he kind of brings to a role, but I mean, when you get there, you've got to deliver it yourself. And I think that's what's phenomenal about, this is England, but particularly the virtues that there was no acting on show, or there was no glorying. There's no glorying on show, and there was so many moments that could have gone either way. That could have been played different ways. And I think and the risks. I mean, I remember looking at it, kind of going, "Oh my God, this is so." Like just the conversations even around the dinner table, just even the non-dramatic stuff was just so normal, and you kind of it brought this real feeling of dread to it. You kind of go, "Oh Jesus Christ, yeah." There's loads more. And I think that's
his specialty, you know. That's his specialty, and then just injecting it with a little bit of humor just when you're about to break, you know, and that. I don't know anybody else that does that like him, and particularly with this, anyone that examines pain the way he does, you know, and sits with it and makes you sit with it. And this business of sitting on the face of a character for an uncomfortably long time, watching them decline, makes you contort as an audience member. You know, you're riding with them in pain, you're low with them, you're guilty with them, because they're all emotions we connect with ourselves, even though they're not maybe related to the story of the character. It's pain and guilt and loss and anger and addiction and loneliness, and we've all had some of that. So it's so easy to invest in these characters, because ultimately what you see with them, with what he does, is redemption and hope and humanity and honesty, and that's the thing. This has to be honest. It has to feel honest. And so, like, we'd be in rehearsals, and he'd say, right, we're telling this story. And then he'd throw out a few workshops. Let's imagine this is happening or that's happening. He'd go 360 degrees around every other thing that could happen, just to try them. And then occasionally something happens in the corner with an idea he never thought of. And he'll say, this to me is more interesting. It feels more honest. Let's abandon that and let's do this. And so he meanders, so you never know what's going to happen on the day, because he's always looking for the honest and the truth, something that people will not go, that doesn't feel right. Even if he's written something, he'll say himself, oh, that sounds shite coming out of your mouth. Oh, will I say it a different way? No, it just doesn't sound right. So he'll say, well, what do you say? What would you say there? Yeah, that sounds better. Let's go with that. So everything is perfect as it's written. For whatever reason, sometimes on the day it comes out a little bit this or that, and so he's willing to collaborate and to mold it and change it so that it feels comfortable in your mouth, so that it seems more real, so that it is more real, and that's why his stuff is so good.
I kind of stepped back for a while, because I wanted to spend time with my boy. So I had a great time with my little infant. And he's nearly 20 now, it's mad. And I had the best time for the first 4 years with him. And then I started to kind of come out of that, and I went back into theatre, and I was delighted to do so. But then I got a kind of something happened. I just went, not that there's anything wrong with them, but I thought, I'm really not into doing Victorian house dramas anymore. I'm really not into doing kind of dated 19th century theatre anymore. Nothing wrong with it. But it's just me. Something changed, and I said, look, if you're going to do something, Pat, if you're going to do something, you do it with all of the passion you did it with before, but don't half do it. So it has to be something, I suppose, I suppose it has to be something that means something to me, and that will challenge me, but change or question things societally and politically. Do you know what I mean? I hate using the word artist. It kind of freaks me out. But as, I suppose, someone who works in the arts, I had to ask myself the question, you know, are you going to ask questions? Are you going to you know, take an issue and highlight it if something means something to you, and you want to comment on it, and then maybe ask questions but offer some answers as well. And so that, I think, I I felt a sense of duty that I wasn't fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, if you're going to go forward, so anyway, I approached Jim, and Forgotten was the first solo piece I did with Fishamble, and since then we've been working together for 14 years.
Wow.
No, it's not important to me that a character I play, any character, is liked. But it is important to me that I like the character. And also that I respect the character. Not that that it's a character that should be respected, but that I, as the one wearing her bones, will respect that. And empathy is an interesting word when it comes to that, actually. I think you have a respect and an obligation to show a realized person and to serve the script and the situation. And the more colors you have, the greater the depth of vision.
Yeah.
And also, I think throwing that back on the audience again, the more colors you have, without drenching the palette, to use the extended metaphor, but we have such an intelligent audience. And if I can go back slightly, because I think it slightly relates to this point, you talked about like the sort of custodians of knowledge. When I've done a few gigs at the Royal Court, which is my favorite theatre in the world, which is ironic because they call it the writers' theatre, but as a performer, it's a beautiful place to work in. That said, I haven't been to Ballymun yet, so but every show I've done there has not been particularly rated. Well, what am I saying? A pair of them have been slated quite ferociously, ferociously in the recognised general press, by the critics, by these great custodians of knowledge, these great protectors, these denizens of taste. And every night I would take a bow to people standing up, to kids cry, kids, I'm in my 40s, anyone younger than 39, to people like laughing and sobbing and jumping to their feet. They understood, and I'm not making it an age issue, but our audience understood what we were doing, and our critics did not understand what we were doing. And you sort of go, who do you believe? Who do you believe? Also, when it comes to bring it back to empathy, then your job is to let the audience go on this journey with you. If you do that, it's a bit like costume designers and sound designers. If you notice their work, they're not doing a good job. The actor is sort of the conduit for the audience. And I think empathy is actually what you feel towards her.
Yes.
You know, something that you've created. I can't play it and I can't create it, but I can use a whole load of different tools so you feel that as you're watching it and it goes through me.
Yeah. Brilliantly put.
I think our psyches are damaged fundamentally by our education. And I think that we read writers, like I didn't relate to the writing that I studied for my junior leaving cert pretty much at all. I had to study it. It was a labour. I didn't connect with it emotionally. It was frankly quite boring, you know, like all of these old English texts and these women who were writing from a totally different, you know, purview and, you know, paradigm than I was living in. And I didn't find it relatable. There were too many adjectives. There was punctuation I didn't understand. And I think somewhere in the back of my head, I still feel like that's what a writer does. And I'm just kind of winging it. Whereas some of the writing that I read of my peers, I write in rhyme when I write for theatre, and other writers who do that. Like when I read the work of like Ray Scannell or Arthur Reardon or any of the amazing female writers who write for theatre, whose work I really connect with, I feel like that's what should be studied at Leaving Cert. And I know there is a small change towards that in some of the cycles now, and some teachers are really pushing that as the age profile of teachers gets younger, then, you know, more fresh and vibrant work is coming in. But I think I still feel like because I'm not James Joyce, Patrick Kavanagh or William Shakespeare, I'm not a writer.
Okay.
But there was a point during the we covered an eclipse, and it was like an 90% eclipse in the UK or 95%. But there was a plane getting the actual moment of eclipse, and it was over the Faroe Islands. And I've since spoken to the cameraman about this. If you imagine a plane up here, relay station on the Faroe Islands, and the thing is over here. So you've got to move the plane with the camera pointing in the same direction. So for the longest possible sweeps, you go past the relay station before it disappears off the point, right? Because at that point you have to turn the plane around and he's going to run to the other side of the thing. So that can't happen during the moment. We need to get one shot of this thing. So the guy has to pick the perfect time to bring the plane around, to turn the plane, to get get the full 5-minute gold, and then he can turn around, like whatever. So this all is happening. But when he does this bit, which is 5 minutes before the eclipse starts, he's just a little bit further away from the relay station, and we lose the picture. And me and Brian are standing with 80 school children in Jodrell Bank at 11 o'clock in the morning with the Director General, whatever he's called, whatever the job is, head of the BBC, smiling, beaming, feeling proud of what the BBC is achieving. When we get told, we've lost all the pictures, we've lost everything. And we have 18 minutes of airtime to fill, including an eclipse we'll have to describe. And we're going, okay. And so we start spooling things. And luckily, the thing kicks in again, and then we get this incredible thing, and then we can just show replays of it and talk about it. But there were moments of, you don't know how close we came to it just being me and Brian interviewing children, going, are you enjoying this? Is it exciting?
Well, thanks a million for joining us. That was just a sample of 19 of the interviews. We've done over 90 so far. We're looking forward to doing more over the Christmas period and into next year. It's been such a great pleasure for us at Access to engage with so many artists through this and our wider work, and to offer it to you, the public, over this very strange year. We'd like to wish you a happy Christmas and a peaceful and prosperous 2021. Talk to you soon.